All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee and Cargo. Really excited to talk to you guys today. We have some great topics. So as people are still coming in, I'll do some introductions, go through an agenda, and then we'll get started. So my name's Rachel. I work with the marketing team here at Interlog. We have Emily Smith, who is our project manager and content writer, Ben Schwingel, who is our international operations director, and then Justin Engelmeyer, who is our vice president. So excited to talk to you guys today about some of these topics. Going into the agenda, we're going to touch on the new demurrage and detention law in California and kind of what are the exceptions on those and kind of when they'll start to take place. Then hop into the busy holiday season for domestic shipping, what's going on with that, and then end with how buying patterns have changed throughout the second half of 2022. So as you guys are listening today, if there's any questions on these topics or topics in general, get it in the Q&A so we can answer those at the end of the webinar here today. And then Emily will go through some current events too. So Justin, Ben, I'll kind of let you guys take it from here.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. So, Ben, I think it's important anytime we're introducing a new law, I think it's important to clearly define what we're talking about and how it's going to change. What are people actually, what effect are they going to see from this? So can we start off by you just simply giving us a definition of what's demurrage? What is demurrage? People are getting charged this all the time. What is it?
Sure, good idea. Demurrage is a charge from the ocean carriers and the terminals for keeping your container in the port for longer than the allotted time. And detention is related. It's after you've retrieved your loaded import container from the port. If you haven't returned it back to the port so the carrier can use it within the allotted amount of time, that's detention. But demurrage is exceeding your limit in the port, and detention is exceeding your limit outside the port.
Sometimes, okay, so let's talk about you have your demurrage, right? Where it's the cargo is at the port and you're given generally X amount of free time, right? X amount of free days there. And this is to allow for your customs to be cleared. It gives you some time to have a trucker show up and be able to pick your cargo up, right? So if you don't have your customs cleared, if something's going on with that, you don't have all the documentation there, and they're waiting for that to happen in the port, you're going to get charged demurrage. You're also going to get charged demurrage if you can't find a trucker and it's just sitting there, right? Well, what are other reasons why sometimes you get charged for demurrage?
It's the two releases you mentioned: carrier release, customs release, and the trucker's not able to retrieve that container. And there's many reasons why a trucker might not be able to, and some are in their control and some are not. And this law is targeting those that are not. And it's nice that this law is coming out. However, of the 4 bullet points below, out of those 5, 4 of them were already able to be mitigated and avoided, but to have them written out in a law is good. And what I mean by that is, take number 1, for example. If the carrier just hasn't made the container available to you, they have discharged it from the vessel, but they have it in a locked part of the terminal, it's not available to you. So what a trucker and a freight forwarder does is they initiate that conversation to request the carrier extend the free time. But if they don't request that extension, then they have a problem. So while these exceptions were made available to us, we had to take the initiative to request it. And the same with number 2, which is congestion. Similarly, port is too congested for the terminal to load a trucker, even if the container is technically available. If the terminal turns away a trucker, the trucker should request an extension of the free day. That won't stop the importer from being charged by the trucker for what's called a truck order not used, a dry run to the port, try to get it. But you'll not be charged demurrage by the carrier or the terminal.
Right, and by the carrier, we're talking the ocean carrier, which is the one that's going to get charged by the port and so on and so forth, right? So the carrier, so if you're using Costco, you're using whomever, Hapag, the carrier is the one that then takes that charge, passes it on to your forwarder, and your forwarder then has to pass it on to the end buyer here. And what this is saying is, if I'm hearing you correctly, is now, which does happen at times, we send truckers in, and it's happened more when there's congestion and stuff. You send a trucker in, they make the appointment, they're told that it's ready to pick up, And the trucker sits there, waits in line. Sometimes they can wait in a long line. And then they get to the gate and they're told, nope, not ready. We can't give it to you. And at that same token, this could be your last free day. And at times they were still billing customers. They were still billing your end users. That's what you're getting at?
That's right.
This is to help prevent that. So it's holding the ports more accountable for actually making your cargo available for people and not charging you when they aren't making it available to you. And now how does this work for detention? What else is this doing for detention? So detention is after your drayage company comes, picks up that container, pulls your container, your ocean container out of the port. Now you only have X amount of free time before that thing has to get returned. And if you go past that free time, then you start getting charged detention. So what are the cases that now this is going to help with that?
Same principles. Congestion, if the terminal's turning away truckers that are trying to return an empty import container.
Got it.
Diverted location is more import demurrage driven, because that's saying the carrier told you or the terminal told you, come pick up a container here. You get there and it's really over in a different depot.
Sure.
In the past, you just request last free day and perhaps the trucker goes to that other place. Last free day be extended. Trucker goes to the other depot to collect it if they can.
Okay, so it seems like this law is helping out a little bit here with some of the issues that we've had, and at least putting it in writing, and so we can hold them accountable for not charging us for it. Now, this is only for California, correct? This is nowhere else. This is just California.
I hope it spreads. And I want to point out the number 4 there, the unsuccessful appointment. So that's something in the past where the carrier or the terminal gives you a certain slot that you need to arrive at that time to pull your container, and they were not accepting last free day extensions. They would say, well, we have an online appointment system. You didn't request it early enough, or you don't like any of the times that we have available. Too bad. But now that's one exception that'll make a real change. Decide what was already available to us if we knew how to request the last free day extension.
Sure. Perfect. All right. Well, I think everyone, if there are still any questions, they should send that in to us and we can answer their specific questions, but that's about all for this new law here. The next one, I believe, we're talking about the holiday season. So the holiday season is here. I mean, this is the busiest time of year. Stuff's coming in. We're trying to make sure that it gets delivered to the final customer that then is putting it on a shelf or selling it off to their end customers. And so again, we want to reiterate a couple of things. One is, if stuff is coming in and you really need it as fast as possible and it's coming inland into the US, you should consider your transload and trucking into the inland portions of the country. And in order to do that, you have to change the bill of lading before it gets into the port on the West Coast or East Coast. And so by that, I mean, if you do it, sometimes you can do it 2 days before it arrives, but you're safer if you do it 5 days before it actually gets to, say, Long Beach. And then they can change the bill of lading, make an adjustment so it actually ends in Los Angeles or Long Beach, where you have a trucker go pick it up and transload that cargo out of the ocean container, put it onto a dry van, where then you have your typical domestic trucker that can truck it all the way across the country and bring it to your final destination. It's just a little more reliable and you're going to get there faster. It is going to cost you more, but it's something to consider if you really need it there. And then we have the buying patterns throughout the second half of 2020. And we have this little graph down here showing a few things. Ben, if you'd like to go over this one.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think it's really representative of what we all feel is happening with increase in e-commerce and reduced amount of retail on the shelf buying. If you look at just the red line first, ignore the blue line, that's showing how it spiked between 2019 and 2020 for obvious reasons. And although it dropped the succeeding years in 21 and 22, it is increasing again. So that's the rate of change. The blue line is showing how much of our holiday shopping consists of e-commerce. And you can see that's a steady growth rate up to 18% projected for this year. just pretty surprising if this is a 5-6 year graph, and we've gone from 11% to almost 19%, saying that within 7-8 years we'll double the amount of e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Rachel, what's next on the docket?
Yep. We got some current events here.
Perfect.
Yes. So Emily, I'll let you take over.
Yes, thanks, Rachel. So there's been some labor strikes in Europe, specifically Liverpool and Felixstowe. In Liverpool, the most recent strike took place October 11th through the 17th. This is their second strike that they have done. Also, the union for those dock workers are saying that they will continue more strikes. They actually have a walkout scheduled for October 14th till November 7th if a deal is not reached. They recently rejected a wage offer of 10.2% increase that the port said. However, the union kind of countered that and said the offer was actually around 8.2% and that the 10.2 offer was based on the maximum amount of overtime that could be possibly worked. Additionally, Felixstowe, the Unite Union that represents those dock workers, have also stated that they are not ruling out a third strike. There's been 2 strikes so far for Felixstowe. The first one began August 21st and lasted 8 days. And then the second strike began on September 27th and lasted 8 days. Back in September, that strike actually was during the same amount of time in Liverpool. So those kind of were right next to each other. It'll be interesting to see if these continue or what happens, but it's just something to be aware of. Additionally, there in the US, there's a new possible rail strike, and just not sure on the likelihood of this, but as of now, 6 unions have voted to ratify the tentative agreements that were agreed upon in the middle of September. The Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division voted against a deal with the U.S. freight railroads. More than 56% of those members decided that they weren't for that deal, mainly because they are not happy with the paid sick leave that they are not currently getting. As a refresher, the tentative agreements include a 24% wage increase during the 5-year period from 2020 to 2024. A 14% wage increase is effective immediately as well once the agreements are ratified, as well as they will receive 5 annual $1,000 bonuses and an additional day off. And then the current COVID situation in Ningbo. Ben, Justin, your thoughts on that and what's currently happening?
This seemed to rear its ugly head again. I'm not sure it's something that most people are going to be affected by, but we have had a few customers talk to us about it. And Ben, normally when this comes up, and it's Ningbo, which is right near Shanghai, and so they can bounce between the 2 ports and so on and so forth. But are we even at that situation? What are you actually hearing about from our partners overseas here? How is this affecting people?
The effect will be felt most with LCL traffic because this lockdown is restricted to just one of the terminals, the Beilun terminal right now in Ningbo. So any of the warehouses that are doing their consolidation operations in that terminal won't be loading LCL cargo to ship out. As you mentioned, Shanghai is about 60 miles north. There's other terminals in Ningbo where people remember from last year when almost all of Ningbo was shut down, carriers just shipped it to Shanghai. A lot of traffic went in there and vice versa. So there's a way to adapt around it, except for certain industries like the LCL consolidations and the warehouses within that terminal. Aside from that, it's pretty much business as usual in Ningbo.
So it's not, this isn't one of those scenarios where a bunch of the suppliers are also shut down, factory workers can't get in and all that kind of stuff. This is really isolated to a terminal And so it might cause some headaches for some, but hopefully the majority of them don't necessarily notice this.
And like last year, even when the manufacturers weren't shut down in districts outside of Shanghai, it was the headache of getting a special permit for the truckers to go in and out of that terminal.
Sure.
It's down. And that is the case there in Beilun or Ningbo.
All right. Well, I guess if you have stuff coming out of Ningbo, you should probably get with your forwarder, make sure that this isn't going to affect you. But yeah, Rachel, you have.
Yep, we'll go into Q&A. So if you guys have any questions on any of these topics or other things, get it in now. And Emily, I'll have you start it.
Sounds good. Kind of on that same topic about COVID, since we are in the middle of fall and winter is approaching soon, do we foresee any significant COVID restrictions that could possibly impact the shipping industry, like we kind of have seen last year and when the pandemic first started? Or do we think it's going to be more optimistic this year?
Seems pretty optimistic thus far. I haven't heard of anything, and I haven't really heard it been mentioned at all in any of the news articles that I keep up with. Ben, have you heard much from anyone overseas?
No, I would agree with you. Saying optimistic, watching, because we know how quickly things can shift. Yeah. Europeans were very dramatic in their clamp down on manufacturing. The Asian countries are very serious about clamping down on the routes and the carrier options. And in the United States, I think take a lot of precautions to keep business moving, but being aware that safety takes priority.
Another good question coming in here. So they know import requirements differ from country to country, but do you guys have any tips on how to best prepare for specific requirements that can sometimes vary?
I guess what we normally do is we have to reach out to our partners overseas and make sure that they get a handle of the factory in whichever country we're discussing here, and that they can best speak to the factory, the supplier, and work through whatever has to happen and make sure all the documentation meets the requirements. But that's really the best way to do it. Is you need to start getting the local parties speaking to one another, and then they can translate that back to us here in the U.S.
Yeah, second that. Nothing beats same language, same time zone. My team and I are communicating through the world with our different digital platforms, WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever it is, to get the information from our counterparts. Nothing beats connecting the shipper with our partner. And on that, I would say, if there's any doubt of proper procedures, whether you're exporting to Egypt or importing from Brazil or exporting stink bug season in Australia, communicate with your buyer and seller. What have you done in the past? Because that's always a good indicator of what needs to happen in the future. Make sure you're just asking again and again what documents were needed before. And forwarders are like Interlog are here to help ask those questions too through our counterparts that have been doing it large scale in and out of their countries.
Perfect. Sweet. Thank you both. We'll end with this. How does the U.S. and India trade lane look like? Any new updates on capacity rates, anything like that?
From what I'm seeing, it's still a geographical division between East and West India. It's because the eastern side has a lower ocean floor, so you can't get the same large vessels into like Chennai and Mumbai. They have to transship through Sri Lanka, adding the extra possibility of delay, versus the West Coast, which is like Mundra, Nhava Sheva, and some of the feeder ports along the western coast. They're able to ship out the large vessels without transshipments. As far as like rates go, it's dropping there from India, but it's behind Southeast Asia rates. Southeast Asia rates are back to where we were almost 3 years ago. India is getting there. Europe is not, but that's just the transition we normally see is Southeast Asia is a leader, then India, then Europe. It was the same way going up.
Perfect. We actually gonna end with one more question. back to the beginning of the webinar, how we discussed the new law in California, and will it take in consideration that a lot of reefer warehouses don't open during the weekend, and now the Saturdays and Sundays could be considered its first free day?
Okay, so you might want to get with your order and speak specifically about which carrier they chose. 3 days constitute either working days or calendar days. Sometimes detention and demurrage are rolled into one lump free time. Sometimes it's 7 days of demurrage and 7 days of detention instead of 14. Right? That doesn't really answer the question directly, besides asking for the details of, is it calendar days or working days? But most likely, yes, it will come towards your 3 days.
Perfect. Thanks. Well, that's the end of our Q&A. Rachel?
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. So next Coffee and Cargo webinar we are going to have on Wednesday, November 16th, 10 a.m. Central Time. We do offer a monthly mailing list, so if you don't want to sign up every month, just email myself at rachel@interlogusa.com. We'll get you on there, and then every Monday before the webinar, you'll get a little notification in your inbox that you've been invited to our webinar. So if you'd like to join that, let me know. And then if there's any other questions after this webinar, you can reach out to any of us at the sales@interlogusa.com email. We'll get you guys your answers back within that day. But appreciate all you guys joining today. Emily, Ben, Justin, it was awesome hearing your guys' thoughts, opinions about all this, and we look forward to you guys coming next month. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.